friend of mine recently watched a number of videos about Zerocracy, and he told me that you guys don't understand how software development works. It's not a manufacturing process. It's not like making boxes of milk. It's a way more creative. There are groups of people called programmers and designers and architects. They sit together, they create together, they make ideas somehow, they invent, and then all of a sudden a child gets born. He's not a programmer, he's a product owner. I mean, he's giving money to programmers, he's a CEO of a company, and he's got a few programmers working for him and with him. And that's the way he understands software development. That's the way most non-technical people see software development process. They think that there is some magic involved. They think that it's sort of like painting a picture or making a movie or writing a book where you cannot really make any estimates or forecasts or anyhow plan the work or break it down into elements. It's just either will happen or the project will fail. There's nothing in the middle. Well, definitely some software development projects and some products definitely require some creativity, and they need some brilliant ideas to be created in order for the product to become something interesting. But in most cases, in the majority of scenarios, in most software development activities and projects and companies, we don't really need to innovate that much. We don't really need to invent that many things in order to create the product which will be used by our customers. We just need to understand the problem. We need to break it down and decompose it to smaller elements. Then we need to use proper technologies and software and hardware elements and components, then put them together and test it all properly, deploy it to our users, and make sure our users can use it and return back their feedback. And that's how the majority of companies work right now. Programmers control their managers, not the other way around. Programmers tell their managers and founders and executive management what will happen, instead of the management telling them what needs to happen. And that's because of this confusion, this misconception that there is a lot of magic involved in the software development. The manager doesn't know what programmers know. The manager doesn't know how to fetch that knowledge from the programmers, how to control what they know, how to measure how much they know, how to transfer that knowledge to somebody else. And that's why management prefers to think that this is just very creative work. We just don't know how these guys work. Just let them work. Let's just surrender and admit that it's not possible to control software development. That's what's happening in the industry right now. Because managers are quite incompetent. Managers are not capable of controlling these creative and technical people. It's difficult to make a programmer, well, to force, I don't like to use that word a lot, but to force a programmer to decompose a complex task into smaller elements and make it more manageable. That's the first step any manager can do when some task is at stake and the task is too complex. So when the scope of a job looks like magic and we don't really know what will happen in the end, it will take a few months to work, then the first step a good manager would do is to ask the technical people, implementers of that task, to break it down into smaller elements. Most managers don't know how to do that. They were not trained to do that. They were programmers in the past. Like this, my friend who is a CEO of a company. He was a programmer in the past. He was writing some code 15 years ago. He doesn't like to do it anymore because he didn't enjoy it. So now he's managing programmers. He remembers that 15 years ago it was a pain to write some code. He doesn't like to touch that anymore. He doesn't want to know what's inside. He just wants to trust his people. He trusts them, and this trust equals to lack of manageability. It's not a secret that the majority of projects actually fail. And it's not also a secret that they fail not because of the technical failures. They fail because of management failures. There's so many research has been done about that, and all of that research, all of the articles I've read about that, they confirm that the problems are coming from the lack of proper management. We just don't manage programmers. We just don't look at risks. We don't plan. We don't estimate. We don't communicate properly through different layers of management. We just let programmers do what they can do. And of course, in the end, this magic, this trust which we give to people gets back to us in lost time, lost budgets, and of course low quality of the product we produce. And this is not how Zerocracy works. In our case, it's a completely different approach. We do force programmers to break down the large scope into smaller elements. And our elements are extremely small. We manage tasks which are half an hour, sometimes 1 hour in size. So they're really micro tasks. Each of the tasks does involve some magic inside. You have to be creative, you have to be talented, you have to be skilled programmer in order to solve each particular task. So we invented the mechanism of how a larger scope can be decomposed into smaller elements in order to become manageable. We don't remove the magic component at all. We do believe that the creativity must stay. We know that it's an intellectual process. Like I said, I'm a programmer myself, and I know that in order to create something, I need to invent, and sometimes to invent a lot, and sometimes I solve problems which nobody solved before. But I know that the amount of that creativity, the amount of that magic which my work needs is really small comparing to the amount of discipline and control my project requires. We are trying to restore the situation in the industry, which is, like I said before, is upside down now. Programmers are managing their managers, and managers have almost no power over them. We are trying to move that power, to return that power to the hands of managers. And we created Zerocracy, a computer which is supposed to help managers to control what's going on. I'm not saying to control programmers, because this word is has negative connotations, but to make them manageable. We don't feel that we are in control of people. We feel that we create discipline and order which helps people to feel better and to enjoy their work more. We are returning the control of the intellectual property your team is creating, your company is building, back to your hands. Just because we decompose the bigger task into smaller ones. So there's no magic in our work as well. We didn't invent a silver bullet. We just found a way to decompose complex tasks to smaller elements and enforce everybody to work only in that model. So in Zerocracy, it's not really possible for a programmer to just work for a long time and say, leave me alone, I'm inventing, I'm innovating, I will come back to you when it's done. We don't have that situations at all. Every programmer has to stop at some point, and that point will show up in just an hour. A programmer has to stop and return back the result, and then continue at that point again, So we force programmers to stop what they're doing, return something back to us, and then continue after the management says to continue. So we're basically breaking down this long path, the long way of creating and innovating into smaller steps. And then the management sees what these steps are and can control how many of these steps are required, can foresee how many of them are still in the plan. And everything becomes manageable because of that small steps. We call them micro tasks.